fun fact, I have never actually set foot in the happiest place on earth, any of them, despite owning my own set of Mickey ears. However, last month it came to my attention that there is a movie that is considered controversial for a number of reasons, but one of them is the fact that it was filmed in both Disneyland and Disney World without Disney's permission. A movie that shows Disney in a surreal and not so positive light, but rather than choosing to admit that this movie exists and take legal action which would be difficult to prove, Disney in fact went for the opposite approach and chose not to acknowledge that this movie was even filmed within its parks. I am of course talking about Escape from Tomorrow from 2013. Set and filmed in the Disney parks, a world of fake castles, costumed characters and animatronics, an unemployed father's sanity is questioned by an encounter with two underage girls while on vacation with his family. As always here on my channel, I'm going to watch the movie off camera, because that way if you still want to watch Escape from Tomorrow from 2013, nothing will be spoiled. Nobody wants to watch a movie that they have just watched somebody watch from start to finish, and I may or may not wear my ears while I do this one.
We have really bad parents.
I've decided that I'm not going to wear my ears to wrap up because I am more of an adult than the adults are in this movie. I think there will be a lot of Disney parents who can kind of relate to the stress of this movie. Not so much like the pervy following around minor kind of aspect to this movie, but the like hallucinating on it's a small world kind of aspect. If you weren't aware, the entire movie is shot in grayscale. That is because A, it is cheaper, and B, it's because as they shot across multiple Disney parks, it would have made it really obvious which of the Disney parks they were in. So you'd have been like, oh, that's the California Magic Kingdom, or that is the Florida Magic Kingdom, or like, that's It's a Small World in this place, or this is the Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger. It would have been too obvious where they were. Thanks to sharing platforms like YouTube, more and more families back in 2013 were actually sharing their family vacations online, so it wasn't uncommon to see somebody walking around the park actually filming what they were doing. The entire movie was shot using guerrilla filming techniques on two Canon 5D Mark II cameras. This is how they were able to film the entire thing within the Disney parks and not actually be questioned by members of staff. As I said in the beginning, Disney avoided actually reacting to this movie and giving a statement because they realised that that would actually give more publicity to this movie and make more people actually go out and see it in the first place. I don't think that this is a particularly great movie, however, I haven't seen anything like this movie before, and it is highly unlikely that you will ever see anything like this movie again because no theme park will ever want the publicity attached to it that this movie got for Disney. The movie is technically split into two halves, and it even has an intermission card that comes up to tell you where this divide is. And the second half of the movie does make more sense if you know why the director and writer Randy Moore created this movie to begin with. When he was a child, his parents divorced, and a lot of his time that he spent with his dad in Orlando was then spent at the Disney parks, so it became this place of like trauma that he then can't separate from the Disney parks because it relates to him and his relationship with his dad. Jim's tunnel vision, Jim is the dad, is wild, and there is an awful lot of sexualization in this movie, particularly of two teenagers who I would say were about 14, so be prepared going into this movie that it does focus a lot on this type of content. It may have the funniest sex scene that I have ever seen in anything in it. At one point Jim meets a random mum in the park when him and his wife have separated and they've each got one of the kids. And there is a particular line, I'm gonna mention this line because it may be my new favourite innuendo of all time, and for a grown woman to say, "You found my hidden Mickey," like, I was gone, like, hysterical, like, that was great. But the overall plot isn't necessarily the strongest. The first half of the movie focuses very much on your typical, like, nuclear family that are going through a typical day at the park, and some sort of slightly strange things are happening, and dad starts off with his son and then parents switch, so he ends up with his daughter, and he's following these two French teenage girls around the park in a very like voyeuristic way. So that's kind of uncomfortable to watch. But the second half of the movie is where things started to pick up a bit for me. The second half of the movie though is the shorter part of the movie, sadly. It starts to pull in this like dark surrealism that is hinted at in the first half, but then it fully kicks into it in the second half. But it's rooted very much in reality at the same time, so that's what makes it interesting to watch. Like, you can parallel it to realistic things. But the ending kind of lost me. Like, I was following along completely fine, and then something happens about 10 minutes before the end of the movie, and I was completely lost. I was like, where has this come from? What is going on? And this continued for me right until the end of the movie. Like, I didn't enjoy the ending very much, if I'm being honest. I have to point out, though, the green screen moments in this. It's obvious at times that parts of this movie have been filmed inside the park, and then they've obviously got B-roll where somebody has, say, sat on a bench and filmed a background where there's hardly anybody in it, and then they've gone onto a green screen and then superimposed the actors onto this B-roll kind of footage, and it doesn't blend in very well with the actual footage from the park, and it makes it really obvious. And yeah, that wasn't great. It's a difficult movie to rate, this one, because I don't love and I don't hate Escape from Tomorrow, but then the entire point of the movie wasn't to make you walk out of this and be like, that was great, 10 out of 10, all the feel goods. It was made and created to provoke and get a reaction out of its viewers. It makes you question the unfamiliar in the familiar, because whether you've been to the Disney parks or not, we're all very familiar with Disney as a franchise. So to see it taken and skewed into this certain kind of way, it does add this like unfamiliar element back into the familiar. It's a very polarizing movie. It's also a very controversial movie, but it's going to continue to be a polarizing movie with everybody that watches it, because Disney loyalists are obviously not going to enjoy this movie as much as somebody who is just a casual Disney connoisseur. It's one of those movies where I could sit here and say, like, I think you should watch this movie, or I don't think you should watch this movie, but it's a very personal taste kind of thing with this. There are going to be people that watch this movie and absolutely love it. There's going to be people that absolutely hate it, and that is, again, completely down to personal taste. But it is one of those movies where I think, because it is so different, and Disney are never ever going to allow anything like this to happen again, and no theme park is ever going to let somebody get away with filming a movie like this in their parks again, that just for that element it is worth a watch. In the end, I am actually going to give Escape from Tomorrow a 2.5 out of 5, because while I do think that it is a very unique movie and I'm glad that I watched it, I don't think that it is for my own personal tastes. So there you have it, my thoughts and opinions on Escape from Tomorrow from 2013. If you have also seen this movie, I would love to know what your thoughts and opinions are down in the comments section down below. You can also find me over on Instagram, where I post every single horror movie that I watch, not just the ones that I post here on YouTube. And I will be back here on Friday with another movie, and this time I'm a little bit nervous about the next one that I'm about to watch, because I've heard it's not great. So until next time, bye.